Have you ever imagined someone walking up to your front door and telling you to leave your own house? It sounds unbelievable, but that's exactly what happened to me. It was a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where everything felt peaceful. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and I was outside watering the flowers in my front yard. It was my usual weekend routine, and I was looking forward to a relaxing day. Then I noticed a woman walking briskly toward my driveway. She carried a clipboard under one arm and wore an expression that suggested she was on an important mission. Without introducing herself or offering a greeting, she stopped a few feet away from me and spoke in a firm, commanding voice. "You have until tomorrow to move out," she said confidently. I lowered the hose and stared at her, convinced I had misheard. "I'm sorry." "What?" She adjusted her glasses, glanced down at the papers on her clipboard, and replied as if she were delivering routine news. "My name is Linda. I'm the president of the neighborhood HOA. According to our records, you are occupying this property illegally. The rightful owner has already been notified, and the process to remove you has begun." For a moment, I honestly thought it had to be some kind of prank. I even looked around to see if someone was recording a hidden camera show. "I bought this house 3 years ago," I said, trying not to laugh. "I have the deed, the mortgage documents, and every piece of paperwork you could possibly need." Linda didn't seem interested in hearing any of it. Instead, she pointed toward my mailbox. "That mailbox isn't HOA approved." Then she gestured toward my front lawn. "The grass is too long." Next came my wooden fence. "The color doesn't match community standards." Finally, she frowned at my pickup truck parked in the driveway. "Commercial-looking vehicles aren't permitted." She spoke with absolute confidence, checking items off her clipboard as if every complaint strengthened her case. Before I could respond, she handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a formal notice claiming I had violated multiple HOA regulations. According to the letter, fines had already been issued, legal proceedings were supposedly underway, and failure to vacate the property could result in additional penalties. I looked at the document in disbelief. "This has to be a mistake," I said. Linda simply smiled. "You should have thought about that before moving in." Then she turned around and walked away without another word. As she disappeared down the sidewalk, I noticed curtains moving in several nearby houses. My neighbors had clearly witnessed the entire exchange. Some looked curious, while others quickly stepped away from their windows the moment I glanced in their direction. Embarrassed and confused, I carried the envelope inside my house and spread the papers across the kitchen table. The more I read, the stranger everything became. Some of the information was completely inaccurate. My name was misspelled in several places. The property description didn't even match my lot exactly, and some of the alleged violations referred to rules that weren't listed anywhere in the HOA agreement I had received when purchasing the home. Still, the legal language looked convincing enough to make anyone nervous. I decided not to panic. There had to be a reasonable explanation. I dug out the folder containing my closing documents, title insurance, and property deed. Every record clearly showed that I was the lawful owner. My real estate attorney had thoroughly reviewed everything before the purchase, so I couldn't imagine how anyone could claim otherwise. That evening, I called the HOA management office, expecting a quick clarification. Instead, I discovered that no one seemed willing to explain what was happening. I was transferred from one person to another, each giving vague answers or telling me someone else would contact me later. What had started as a peaceful Saturday morning had suddenly turned into a confusing legal nightmare. At the time, I still believed it was nothing more than an administrative error that would be corrected within a day or two. Little did I know, this bizarre confrontation with Linda was only the beginning of one of the strangest and most exhausting legal battles I would ever face. The following week, official court papers arrived at my front door. At first, I assumed they had been delivered by mistake. I stared at the envelope for several seconds before opening it, expecting it to contain another warning or perhaps a notice requesting additional information. Instead, I found a lawsuit. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Linda had actually filed a legal complaint, claiming that I was occupying my own home without permission. According to the documents, she insisted the property belonged to someone else, and that she was acting on behalf of the rightful owner to protect the neighborhood. The filing requested that the court order me to vacate the property immediately. I read every page twice, hoping I had misunderstood something. None of it made any sense. There was no mystery about who owned my house. I had purchased it through a licensed real estate agent 3 years earlier. The sale had gone through the normal legal process, complete with inspections, title searches, financing, and county registration. How could someone simply claim that none of it existed? As soon as I recovered from the initial shock, I contacted the title company that had handled my home purchase. They treated the matter seriously and immediately reviewed my file. Within a few hours, they called me back. "There doesn't appear to be any issue with your ownership," the representative explained. "The title is clear, and the deed is legally recorded in your name." Hearing those words was reassuring, but I still had a lawsuit sitting on my kitchen table. To be absolutely certain, I began checking every official record connected to the property. The deed? Legally registered in my name, property taxes, paid in full and up to date, mortgage? Every payment had been made on time, county records? They matched my ownership perfectly, with no conflicting claims or unresolved disputes. Everything pointed to one simple fact: the house was legally mine. Even my real estate attorney was baffled when he reviewed the court filing. He carefully read through Linda's complaint, occasionally shaking his head before setting the papers down. "I've handled property disputes for years," he said, "but this doesn't line up with any public records I've seen." He explained that ownership disputes usually involved missing deeds, inheritance conflicts, fraudulent transfers, or recording errors. None of those situations applied to my case. "What she's claiming simply isn't supported by the official documents," he added. "That doesn't mean we can ignore it, though. As frustrating as the lawsuit seemed, we still had to respond properly. Ignoring a court filing could create unnecessary complications, even if the allegations were completely false. So we started preparing. Every document connected to my home purchase was pulled from filing cabinets, storage boxes, and digital archives. We organized the purchase agreement, the closing paperwork, mortgage approval documents, wire transfer receipts, bank statements showing the down payment, the recorded deed, county registration records, property tax receipts, homeowners insurance policies, inspection reports, title, insurance documents. Page after page, each record told the exact same story. I was the lawful owner of the property. While my attorney prepared our legal response, life in the neighborhood became increasingly uncomfortable. Linda didn't seem content with filing the lawsuit. She began telling neighbors that I was about to be evicted and that the HOA was finally removing an illegal occupant from the community. The rumors spread surprisingly fast. Some neighbors stopped waving when I walked by. Others avoided eye contact altogether. A few quietly gathered in small groups whenever I was outside, lowering their voices as I approached. Even people who had always been friendly suddenly seemed uncertain about speaking to me. It was frustrating to watch false stories circulate while knowing I couldn't publicly discuss an active legal case. Every rumor made me look guilty, even though every official document proved otherwise. Friends encouraged me to ignore the gossip, reminding me that facts mattered more than neighborhood speculation. They were right. No amount of rumors could change legal records. Eventually, everything would come down to evidence presented before a judge. The courtroom would settle the matter once and for all. Or so I thought. The hearing finally arrived. Linda entered the courtroom, looking incredibly confident. Dressed in a tailored suit and carrying several thick folders, she walked with the kind of certainty that made it seem as though the outcome had already been decided in her favor. She smiled politely at everyone she passed, occasionally glancing in my direction with an expression that suggested she believed victory was guaranteed. I, on the other hand, sat quietly beside my attorney. Although I knew the truth was on my side, it was impossible not to feel nervous. Months of stress, sleepless nights, and uncertainty had all led to this single hearing. Everything depended on what happened in the next few hours. When the judge entered, the courtroom stood before settling into complete silence. The judge began by asking Linda to explain the basis of her lawsuit. Without hesitation, Linda stood and confidently claimed she had evidence proving another individual, not me, was the rightful owner of my home. She insisted that I had been occupying the property without legal authority, and claimed she had sent multiple warnings instructing me to leave. According to her, I had ignored every notice and continued living there, despite knowing I had no legal claim. She spoke with remarkable confidence, pointing to the folders she had brought, as if they contained undeniable proof. For a brief moment, I could feel the tension building in the courtroom. Then my attorney calmly rose to his feet. Without raising his voice or showing the slightest sign of emotion, he approached the judge's bench. With a neatly organized binder, "Your Honor," he began, "the official records tell a very different story." One by one, he presented every official document. First came the original property deed, showing the legal transfer of ownership. Next were the county land records confirming the deed had been properly recorded years earlier. Then came the property tax records, showing every payment had been made under my name. After that, he presented mortgage statements documenting years of regular payments, along with insurance records, utility records, and additional county filings. Every single document listed me as the lawful owner. Every signature matched, every date aligned perfectly. Every record had been officially filed with the appropriate government office. The judge carefully reviewed each document, occasionally making notes while comparing the paperwork with the court file. After several minutes, the judge looked up and turned toward Linda. "Can you provide proof that someone else owns this property?" the judge asked. The confidence on Linda's face began to fade. She hesitated before opening one of her folders. She shuffled through stacks of papers. Another folder followed, then another. Minutes passed in complete silence except for the sound of papers being flipped. The courtroom watched patiently. Finally, Linda pulled out a single photocopy of an old document and handed it to the judge. The judge examined it carefully. A moment later, the judge frowned. "This document has no legal authority," the judge said. "It has never been recorded with the county, contains no certified verification, and does not establish ownership." The courtroom became very quiet. Linda attempted to explain that she believed the document should still be considered valid, but her explanation only created more confusion. She could not identify where the document had originated, who had prepared it, or why it had never been officially recorded. Then came the biggest surprise. Rather than relying solely on the evidence already presented, the judge requested the county's official property records directly from the court clerk. The clerk immediately contacted the county records office. Within minutes, certified electronic records were delivered to the courtroom. The judge reviewed them carefully. They confirmed exactly what my attorney had already shown. The deed was valid. The title had never been transferred. The tax records were current. The mortgage remained in my name. There were no competing ownership claims, no hidden transfers, and no legal disputes recorded against the property. I was the only legal owner. At that moment, Linda's confidence completely disappeared. Her shoulders dropped, her expression turned pale, and she quietly lowered her eyes. The folders she had carried into the courtroom with such confidence suddenly looked meaningless. My attorney simply sat back down. Without saying another word, he knew the evidence had spoken for itself. The judge closed the official records, looked directly at Linda, and paused for several long seconds before speaking again. But the hearing wasn't over yet. As the judge continued asking questions, more problems with Linda's case began appearing. The confidence she had displayed when entering the courtroom was fading quickly. Her answers, once firm and rehearsed, became hesitant. Each response seemed to create more questions than it answered. The judge leaned forward and spoke in a calm, measured tone. "Ms. Linda, before filing this lawsuit, Did you personally speak with the individual you claim is the true owner of this property? Linda paused for a moment before quietly answering, "No." The judge made a note. "Did you verify ownership through the county recorder's office?" Again, she shook her head. "No." "Did you request a certified copy of the property's title records?" "No, Your Honor." Each answer made the courtroom noticeably quieter. The judge continued. "So, what exactly did you rely upon before bringing this lawsuit?" Linda took a deep breath. "I heard from several neighbors that the property belonged to someone else," she explained. "I also found some old documents online that suggested there had been a different owner years ago." The judge looked up from the file. "Neighborhood rumors are not legal evidence," the judge said, "and outdated documents, without verification, cannot establish current ownership." Linda nodded slightly, but offered no further explanation. Then the judge asked one simple question. "So who exactly are you representing?" Linda froze. She looked down at her papers, then glanced around the courtroom as if searching for an answer that wasn't there. Several long seconds passed. Finally, she quietly admitted, "I'm not officially representing anyone." The silence inside the courtroom became almost overwhelming. Even the spectators sitting in the back exchanged surprised looks. The judge folded his hands. "So you filed this lawsuit claiming someone else owned the property? Without authorization from that person?" Linda swallowed hard. "Yes. And without confirming ownership through the county? Yes. And without speaking to the alleged owner? Yes." The admission spoke louder than any argument either side could have made. My attorney remained seated, allowing the facts to unfold on their own. The judge then turned to the court clerk. "Please search the court's filing history for lawsuits previously filed by Ms. Linda." The clerk quickly accessed the electronic court records. After several minutes, the clerk handed a printed report to the judge. The judge carefully reviewed each page. His expression became increasingly serious. He looked back toward Linda. "It appears this is not the first time you've brought a claim like this." The courtroom listened closely. According to the court records, Linda had filed several similar lawsuits against homeowners over the past few years. Each complaint followed nearly the same pattern. She alleged that another individual was the rightful owner of a property. She claimed the occupants had no legal right to remain there. And, in every case, the official property records proved otherwise. Each lawsuit had ultimately been dismissed. The judge flipped through the report once more. Before addressing Linda directly, "You've repeatedly filed legal actions without verifying basic ownership records," the judge said. "Our court depends upon parties conducting reasonable investigation before initiating litigation. Filing claims based on speculation or unverified information places an unnecessary burden on homeowners, attorneys, court staff, and taxpayers." Linda lowered her head. She no longer attempted to defend her actions. The confidence that had filled the courtroom earlier had completely disappeared. My attorney then stood. "Your Honor," he said respectfully, "the evidence clearly establishes that my client is the lawful owner of the property. There is no genuine dispute regarding ownership. We respectfully request that this matter be dismissed with prejudice, so the same claim cannot simply be refiled without new legal grounds." He paused before continuing. "We also ask the court to consider appropriate sanctions for the unnecessary expenses, legal fees, and significant amount of court resources consumed by this unsupported lawsuit." The courtroom remained silent as everyone waited for the judge's decision. After reviewing the evidence one final time, the judge nodded. "The motion is granted." With those 4 words, months of uncertainty came to an end. Within minutes, Linda's lawsuit was officially dismissed. The clerk entered the ruling into the court record. Relief washed over me as I realized I no longer had to defend my ownership of my own home. My attorney quietly shook my hand and offered a reassuring smile. Across the courtroom, Linda slowly gathered her folders. They were the same folders she had carried in with complete confidence, but now they seemed to hold little value. She avoided making eye contact with anyone as she returned to her seat. Most people assumed the hearing was over. Some spectators even began collecting their belongings. But the judge remained seated. He looked directly at Linda before speaking again. His voice calm but unmistakably firm. It was immediately clear that dismissing the lawsuit was only the beginning. The judge wasn't finished speaking. Before ending the hearing, the judge addressed Linda one final time. The courtroom had grown quiet again. Everyone seemed to sense that the judge wanted to leave the parties with an important message before bringing the proceedings to a close. The legal system exists to resolve genuine disputes, the judge said, not personal disagreements, assumptions, or neighborhood conflicts. He paused briefly, allowing his words to settle over the room. Courtrooms are places where facts are examined and evidence is tested. Anyone who files a lawsuit has a responsibility to make a reasonable effort to verify the information they present. Failing to do so wastes valuable judicial resources and places unnecessary emotional and financial burdens on innocent people. The judge acknowledged that defending against an unsupported lawsuit could be both stressful and expensive, even when the defendant ultimately prevailed. After reviewing the evidence and the circumstances surrounding the case, the judge ruled that Linda would be responsible for reimbursing a significant portion of my legal expenses. Although it would not erase the months of anxiety I had endured, it was an acknowledgement that her actions had consequences. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom. The hearing was officially over. In the days that followed, news of the decision spread quickly throughout the neighborhood. People who had once avoided speaking to me gradually began stopping by. Some apologized for believing the rumors without ever asking for my side of the story. Others admitted that Linda had always spoken with such confidence that they assumed she must have been telling the truth. One neighbor quietly confessed, "I should have asked questions instead of believing gossip." "I'm sorry." Another shared that they, too, had received violation notices from the homeowners association that seemed unfair or unsupported. As more residents spoke openly, it became clear that my experience was not entirely unique. Several people described feeling intimidated by the HOA's aggressive approach, even when they believed they had done nothing wrong. The case became a turning point for the community. Within a few months, new HOA elections were held. Residents participated in greater numbers than usual, determined to restore trust in the association. Linda was voted out of her leadership position, and a new board promised to operate with greater transparency and accountability. The HOA also adopted stricter procedures. Complaints now had to be documented, independently verified, and reviewed before any legal action could even be considered. The goal was to ensure that disagreements would be handled fairly, and that homeowners would not face unnecessary legal battles based on rumors or assumptions. As for me, life slowly returned to normal. I could finally enjoy my home again, without worrying about unexpected legal notices or false accusations appearing in my mailbox. Simple moments: working in the yard, relaxing on the porch, and greeting neighbors. Once again felt peaceful instead of stressful. Looking back, the entire experience taught me lessons I will never forget. Confidence alone doesn't make someone right. Holding a position of authority doesn't place anyone above the law. And assumptions can never replace documented facts. When evidence is honest, complete, and properly verified, the truth has a remarkable way of revealing itself. So if you ever find yourself facing unfair accusations or false claims, remember this: don't panic. Keep organized records, know your legal rights, remain respectful, patient, and calm throughout the process. Rumors may spread quickly, and confidence may persuade people for a while. But facts have a lasting strength that rumors never will. In the end, truth supported by real evidence has the greatest voice, and justice, though it may take time, has a way of finding it.